Yo, welcome back to another video. Now, I am going to be doing all of these unit showcases a bit differently. I was going to do all three of these units within one video, but man, Gogeta and Broly especially, they are crazy. I feel like they deserve their own videos where, honestly, Frieza I might not even do a video on because personally, he's just not that good. He's way too expensive and yeah, you're pretty much only using him in dungeon and that's about it. So this is going to be on Gogeta because I think he's the true Vanguard unit of this update. You'll see why when I get into the numbers, but let's get straight into actually showcasing the unit itself. So 1200 place down, he is a blast type unit and he is a 3 placement. He's the secret unit from the dungeon, and honestly I really like this unit. I think he is my favorite unit from the update. Broly is close up there, I guess. Definitely Broly and Gogeta beat over Stark and Frieza. Frieza's probably the worst. Stark, he would be good if he just wasn't so expensive in my books. That's about it. But placement damage is pretty average for a secret unit. He does have quite low damage stats, but this is not where all of his damage comes from. It all comes from his crits. So we'll get into that. Going over his attacks, his second attack is 9.6 thousand, his third attack is 42.4 thousand, and his final attack is 85.7 thousand. This gives him a total cost of 86.9 thousand yen to upgrade one of them, and upgrading all three of these will be a total cost of 260,000. Going onto his attacks, you can see the first one is a cone AoE, and it is him doing a Kamehameha. Going on to Falling Stars, it is a thicker AoE and he does transform into Super Gogeta, which is pretty cool. There we go. And then we have Comet Burst. This is a medium AoE. This is straight from the movie where he like crosses his arms and reaches up to the sky. I love this attack. That is such a cool attack. And then we have the final one, which is Cosmic Dust Punisher, which is a large AoE with a cone attached to the end of it. I do like this AoE. It is a pretty good AoE. So 38.7 thousand damage for 86,000 cost really is not that much, but I will say all of his damage comes from his passives compared to most of these units that we have been getting recently, where most of the damage is just in his displayed damage, which, you know, that's the reason why I love this unit so much, is because it just his passives. So we'll get into that right now. He has 3 passives, super effective. He has 100% crit rate, but he loses that base crit damage every unit has. So he builds up crits through a different part of his passive. Anytime a fused unit in range swaps, that swap count counts as 2 instead. This does not work with Sid, if anyone is wondering. It is simply only working with Goku, since he transforms into Vegito. Going on to the second passive, it is Fuse Reborn. This is where he does get the 25% cost reduction for fused units. This also includes on a single placement as well. Anytime this unit crits, he buffs fused units you placed crit rates by 50% and he gains half of their crit damage. This lasts for 20 seconds and cannot stack. Pretty good. His last passive is Tag Your It. Anytime your units or this unit crits, buff this unit's crit damage by 5% up to 75% and perform attack 1. This is a local cooldown of 5 seconds. And this unit has a 100% chance to dodge. Now, the thing is that's really funny with this is a local cooldown of 5 seconds, right? I think this is just because of the part where it's saying any of your units or this unit can crit. This is a local cooldown of 5 seconds because if you did not know, I guess you wouldn't know, he has an SPA of 5.3 seconds, but from testing, I found out that he just has a animation time of 6 seconds total, including his follow-up. So he will always do his follow-up even if he is lower than 5 SPA, which is really good for his Monarch because his Monarch version, he has a 4.8 second SPA, so it means that even with that low SPA, he is still going to be doing his follow-ups constantly. But it still is nice because if he isn't following up, then he is actually, I think he is actually attacking on this SPA instead. It's purely if he is able to follow up, he gets put to a 6 second SPA. If he isn't following up, he is attacking at this SPA instead. So there is that. Going over his damage, now his DPS will be pretty low with just a single placement because he does require other units placed to gain their crit damage, and just purely with Gogeta alone, I'm just going to showcase with all 3 of these placed down. This is so we can get the more accurate buff if you were to have all 3 of these placed down, because having 3 of these placed down will give a single placement more higher DPS than if you just have one upgraded by themselves, which I do have the DPS right here. It is 22,000 DPS for a single Gogeta placed and nothing else. That is how much DPS he will be doing. But with all 3 of these guys placed down, I believe the max crit damage that you can get up to is 2.75 35 times. So we can do 38.7 thousand damage times 2.75. And then if he were to follow that up, he'll be doing 212,000 damage on a single placement. All three of these guys will be doing 638,000 damage every single time they attack with a follow-up, giving a single placement a DPS of 35.4 thousand and a group DPS of 106,000 DPS. So pretty good unit. But yeah, this is just simply the start for Gogeta because he does like to take crit damage off other units, so you can like create crazy teams to where you can buff all of these guys by an insane amount, which I won't get to fully into detail with the Traitless version, and more I'll go into detail with the Monarch version instead, because I do like the Monarch DPS that he does have. Although, he does have crazy DPS as a Traitless unit as well, which I'll showcase very briefly. If we were to just simply place down a Hercule, go ahead and place down a Hercule. All right, now that we have simply just added in a Hercule buff, let's go ahead and see what their group DPS is now with just a single other unit placed down. I don't have a Deadeye, so I'm placing down all three just so I can consistently have his buff up, but most of the time you're just going to have one of these guys placed down and upgraded to 7. So I am going to do just math as we go instead of me having it on my spreadsheet just to showcase. So we have 46,000 damage that he deals. We have that crit, which now brings him to 141,000 damage. This is a single Gogeta is dealing this damage with one attack. If he were to then do a follow-up damage, he is doing 283,000 damage. And now with that, we divide it by 6 because he is following up. He is doing 47,000 DPS on a single unit. If we were to go back to the previous one, and now we times it by 3 for every placement, all three of these guys are doing 850,000 damage each time they do an attack and a follow-up, and then we divide that by 6. They have a total group DPS of 141,000 DPS. We have increased his DPS by 35,000 with just using a Hercule and Boo, which is kind of crazy. Now I have a, instead of me using the Goku that I have in my inventory because he does have Burb on as well, I'm going to bring in a Goku. We go ahead and place down our Gokus. All three of these Gokus have Deadeye, so you can see they have 1.7 times crit damage, and they should get the Hercule buff applied to them, and then we should see a higher crit damage buff on these Gogetas. So now it is 4.55 times. So now let's work out this with the new crit damage. So back again, we do 46, and then we times that by 455, and then we times this by 2. So this is a single Gogeta. This is how much he's hitting for if he is following up. This is Traitless, by the way. Now we add in the other two Gogetas. Now they're doing, if they all attack and they all follow up, they're doing 1.2 million damage every 6 seconds, which gives a total DPS of 211,000. This is for simply placing down a unit that has Deadeye that costs a total of 3,000. 3,000 yen has now increased the DPS from the initial 106,000 by 100,000 DPS. Like, well, I guess we do have the 30,000 from Boo. So for 33,000 yen, we've increased his damage by, or we've increased his DPS by 100,000. And we can continue to go further. We can bring in Ichigo because he has the category buffer. He does work as well. We place an Ichigo. We let him get buffed by Hercule. We let him get all the crit buff, as you can see, and we just need to wait. There you go, 6.05 times crit damage multiplier. So now we can work this out. This is a Traitless unit. This is a Traitless unit, by the way. Times this by 6.05, and then we times this by 2, and then we times for the placements. They're doing 1.6 million damage every single time that all three of them attack. We divide this by 6. They're doing 281,000 DPS. That is a consistent DPS if they're attacking a boss as well, which is kind of crazy. This is what I'm saying, like, Gogeta might be the secret Vanguard unit from this update. He is insane. He's nuts. You can scale this even higher if you have Cat on him, because he prefers to have a raw damage buff than if you were to give him more crit damage, because he already has really high crit damage buff from everything else. So if you were to only give him like a 30% crit damage buff, that is way less than if you were to do like a 15% damage buff on him, because that will scale higher than the crit damage, because it's just kind of how it works. I'm not really going to get too much into detail on it, but just think of it this way. When it comes to all the different multipliers in the game, you don't want to go all in on one. You always want to try to, maybe you do want to go all in on one, but then try to evenly spread the other two out that you have so you can get an overall higher damage. But yeah, that is Traitless Gogeta. He is doing crazy amounts of damage. Now we'll go ahead and showcase Monarch Gogeta. Let's go ahead and show King's Burden version of my Gogeta. So 154.8 thousand damage. He'll have a crit damage of 1.75 because he doesn't have any other additional placements next to him. So he himself is actually going to have a relatively low DPS. If you were to only use Gogeta and nobody else, this gives him a DPS of only 90,000. But the Monarch version of Gogeta is a very selfish unit. He wants to have those other placements and those other setups. So now I will actually show the true power of Monarch Gogeta. Let me do my setup that I had before with those only 3 different units, but this time around I'm actually going to have familiars on them just so we can show like the true potential instead of just doing it without familiars. So I'll bring in my Deadeye Ichigo that I do have, and I'll bring in my Gogeta that I accidentally rolled Monarch on, which I did regret at first, but after testing quite a lot, I do not regret one bit getting this unit Monarch. If there were to be a Monarch that I recommend, it is definitely Broly or it is Gogeta 100%. So my Gogeta has a 38% increased damage to blast. So this means that his base damage is 218,000 damage instead of 154,000 damage. This is pretty good alone. Just this alone now brings him up to a total damage or DPS of, let's see, boom, 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 times this by boom, boom. He's now at 127,000 DPS compared to 90,000 DPS without a familiar. So we are getting a huge start in his climb with his damage. I'll be back once I have got his crit damage fully built up, so before I place down all of these other units. Alright, Gogeta is fully built up. Now I'll do the same setup with all of the other familiars that I do have equipped. So we will have our Hercule. I do have a familiar on him, but it's useless. I was testing other things. The best familiar to have on your Hercule would be Fu. Fu is like the best thing to put on Hercule when it comes to buffing Gogeta to even go way more insane in damage. Now I actually just need to have my Hercule crit, so I'm going to do the same thing I did before and place all 3 of them down just so we are making sure that we are going to have 100% uptime on his buff, because yeah, I really need to get Deadeye on him, which I'll do eventually, but not for now. So with just Hercule alone, let's go ahead and look at his damage numbers now. This is going to be a longer video and it's not really going to be structured like I've done with my previous ones, because it's just to try to show you how ridiculous his damage can be. So he's doing 500,000 damage each attack. This is without his follow-up. If we were to bring in his follow-up, it's 1,000,000 damage every 6 seconds, which gives him a total DPS of 180,000 DPS. Wow, that's a single unit and also added with the cat. Now we add in the Ichigos and we add in our Gokus. I have a 30% crit damage burb on Ichigo, and I have a 24% crit damage burb on my Goku. Let's see what his crit damage multiplier is now. It is 5.05 multiplier. I don't know if this is actually higher. I'm just going to let it play out and see if it will change, but I'm pretty sure it's the 5.05 is correct. So let's go ahead and calculate this out now. So 262,000 damage. We times this by 5.05 crits. So a single attack, he is dealing 1.3 million damage. If we were then to add in his follow-up damage, it is 2.6 million damage. And we divide this by 6. He has 441,000 DPS. This is by adding 2 different units with their placements down, like not even investing any money into them. With the setup alone, like if I were to remove this and this Hercule had to be a Deadeye Hercule, this entire setup to place him down, this is like maybe like 110,000 yen. Maybe I might be getting that wrong. It's like 86, 30,000. Okay, maybe it's like 120,000 yen total for Gogeta to be able to do 441,000 DPS. By the way, this is insane. This is crazy numbers. He is a Vanguard rarity in disguise. Trust me, get him. Like, he is good. Maybe I'm starting some sort of propaganda, but oh my god, this is only 4 unit slots. We have 2 extra slots. One of them, of course, is going to be a farm. You can either run double farm, but for the setup, it only costs around 120,000. So a speed wagon is just completely fine. And from there, we can add in a smith, or if you want, we can add in a weather report, which I think a weather report can output more damage than a smith with his buff, even with Fu bugged. I think weather report just does more because of that 30% damage multiplier. This is a multiplicative, so On top of what we've already multiplied, we just go ahead and multiply a 30% buff on that as well. So now every single time they do an attack with a follow-up, if bubble is applied, it is a bit of a RNG thing whether or not that hits are actually getting hit with bubbled. He would be doing, in an ideal world or in an ideal scenario, 3.4 million damage if we go ahead and divide that by 6. Because of his SPA animation, I'm always going to remind people, it's always going to be 6 SPA. He's doing 573,000 DPS. Monarch Gogeta, everyone. This is my favorite unit so far in the game. I really wanted to get Deadeye, but I'm probably not, because McReapers is doing a video going over Deadeye Gogeta, and I have seen the numbers. I think Deadeye Gogeta does have like really high potential as well, but it's like very similar to Monarch, to where it's better to go with Monarch because it is a lot cheaper than if you were to set up with your Deadeye Gogetas. But yeah, that is going to be this video going over Gogeta. I will be doing a video on Broly as well, and then I'm not too sure if I really will do one on Frieza. I just think he's not that good of a unit. But yeah, I appreciate if you guys have watched this far through the video. See ya.